live. We will see here in a second. Having some minor challenges this morning. Just trying to get in. It's tough. You think that audio, right? You think that audio will be easier than video. Makes sense, right? I mean, it's just one facet, whereas video, you have both audio and video, right? But I'm telling you, trying to get trying to get it to work right sometimes just isn't the easiest thing. And we're going to try that today. So that's why I started ever so slightly early on this side, and we'll see how it plays out. We'll just have to play around and see. But part of it is we don't have part of the bad part is, I guess, we don't have the intro music. So I'm going to just go straight into it. Y'all ready? Hello. Gosh, it sounds cheesy. Hello and welcome to another episode of the JD Rucker Show. I'm your host, JD Rucker, and today it's we've got a killer show as usual, but we're unfortunately not going to be able to take live calls. That's been one of the challenges that we've been faced with, is trying to get, again, the wonderful people over at WWCR shortwave radio, trying to get that situated properly, and still be able to go live on Rumble and Getter and everywhere else we're live on video. So we aren't going to be able to take phone calls today. But if you want to chat me up, I'm going to try to keep an eye on the Rumble chat. If you want to go to what is it, jdrucker.com/rumble, you can chat me up there. If you are listening through WWCR shortwave radio, that is wonderful, awesome, and amazing, and I greatly appreciate you all. Shout out to the guys that are trying to get this all squared away. I am the most apparently difficult show host in the world to deal with, not because I'm like a jerk or anything, but because we're trying to move this forward as best we can with, I would say, technological challenges based around having, this setup, this home office that I've got, this home studio, I should say, slightly separate from my home office, and trying to make it all work. One of the biggest challenges has been getting the quality to work. Yeah, we broadcast through Restream, and that allows us to go out to multiple places at one time, right? But the video quality just isn't there. So I'm hopeful, very hopeful, Lord willing, by tomorrow we will, my good friends at BBS Radio and I will be able to kind of meld in some Zoom action so that the video quality is better. Plus, then I'll be able to take calls. We'll try to still have it to where I can show the screen, which is so very, very important, because the screen has all the information that I need. And I want you guys who are at least watching on video to be able to see that as it's going live. And just again, trying to, I don't like settling for just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I don't think any American should. Okay. As Americans, we should be doing everything we can to get the most of everything. Ever since 2019, 2020, really starting with the pandemic, we've been settling for this, compromising for that. We're the United States of America. We are Americans. Granted, I'm a legal immigrant, but praise God for that. But we shouldn't have to settle. We shouldn't have to not have our cake and eat it too. We should have our cake. We should eat it too. That's kind of what this whole experiment of America is all about. It's about freedom. It's about being able to prosper. It's about being able to fulfill our goals in life. If you are a Bible believing Christian such as I am, if that goal is to spread the gospel and to do the will of God, then we should be able to do that without compromise. If you are your focus is more on prosperity and capitalism and all that stuff, you should be able to do whatever you need to do to make money. What we found throughout 2023, and again, really ever since the pandemic, we've had to make choices. Do we want toilet paper today? If so, we're going to have to go wait in line for 20 minutes just to get toilet paper. I remember those days during the lockdowns. Do we want to travel? If so, we're going to have to get injected. And if we're not injected, then we're not going to be able to travel. We're not going to be able to go to school. We're not going to be able to keep our jobs. We're not going to be able to do anything of that nature. Of course, throughout the whole push to vaccinate every man, woman, and child in the country, we continuously make compromises, and that's just not the American way. So, but I'm not going to sit here and rant all day. I do want to talk about some great stories. There is one that it totally chapped my khakis yesterday. It's funny because, sometimes I consider myself as being having good judgment when it comes to stories. Okay. And I will look at a story and I'll say, okay, so this is a story that everybody's going to hop on to. So no need for me to cover. You know what I mean? And just as an example, time Joe Biden walks around and makes a fool out of himself and goes up and sniffs girls or whatever, those types of stories I generally don't cover because I know that every conservative outlet, every talk show, conservative show, they're all going to talk about it. But then sometimes I'll see stories and I'll be like, ooh, that's one that's important that nobody's going to talk about, or very few people are going to talk about. So I picked out this story to be my lead today. And then I almost pulled it because over the course of from basically yesterday afternoon throughout last night and then into this morning, everybody's talking about it. So that's good. I'm glad because it's an important, but it's like I said, I try to highlight the stories that people need to see because they're not seeing it elsewhere. Chances are you may have heard of this one. There was a Deadspin writer. Deadspin is apparently I guess it's a sports blog. I don't know, kind of weird. Some sort of blog, but Deadspin writer who falsely accused a child of blackface has his old tweets resurface, and this is from Red State, Bonchi over at Red State. I'm going to go straight to this guy's post. Let's find the original one. I actually don't even know that the original one is still up. That's funny that they don't link to that. Well, let's go to his follow-up. So he wrote an article, and the article over at Deadspin was titled, "The NFL Needs to Speak Out Against the Kansas City Chiefs Fan in Blackface Native Headdress." And he's a Kansas City Chiefs fan. This kid's what, like 8? Okay, I mean, he's a child. And yes, from the angle, it looked like the kid's face was painted black. But anybody who's an NFL fan likely knows the Kansas City Chiefs, their colors are black and red. And sure enough, you see the other side of his face. The kid had one half of his face, okay, the right side of his face had black, and then the left side of his face was red. It was the team's colors, and he had his headdress on, which is again a fan being a fan. It's obvious, it's blatant. And okay, so he wrote this article like an idiot, taking one side of the face, calling this racism, calling this blackface, which it definitely 100% was not. Okay, this is a fan being a fan. This is a kid being a kid. This is a kid who's going to an NFL game and who is dressing up and putting on face paint like tens of thousands of other people every single Sunday, putting on face paint. And in this particular case, one side of his face was black, the other side was red. Well, this guy, after learning this, doesn't say, "Oh, my apologies for trying to ruin the life of this child." Instead, he doubles down. He says, "For the idiots." And, oh, by the way, his name is Karen. It might as well be Karen, but I think it's Karan. Maybe it's Karen. RRON. Phillips over at Deadspin. He says, "For the idiots in my mentions who are treating this as some harmless act because the other side of his face was painted red, I can make the argument that it makes it even worse." Oh, wow. Double down. And that's, if you ever want to see a trend amongst, I would say mostly leftists, but you'll occasionally get it from people on the right. When they get embarrassed, when they get shamed, when something gets pointed out that makes them look foolish, the tendency, especially in today's world of social media and a permanent internet, and by permanent I mean if he takes it down, it's not like it's He could take down the article, he could take down the original tweet, and it's still going to be talked about. So why apologize? Why admit you're wrong? This is their thinking, not mine. Yeah, he doubles down. He says, y'all are the ones who hate Mexicans, but wear sombreros on Cinco. Yeah, I mean, this guy couldn't get any more racist. This guy couldn't get any more, just straight up bigotry against the enemy. In this case, he is the enemy are white people. And he is a black man. So you go down and you start seeing some of his past tweets. Here's a tweet from 2016. I'm in Saginaw. Spent a lot of time in Flint. I've never seen this many white people in Flint in my life. It's concerning. Now I want you to stop just a second and just imagine if a white journalist says, I'm in Springfield, Missouri. Spent a lot of time in Battlefield, Missouri. I've never seen this many black people in Battlefield in my life. It's concerning. Okay, that person who would have said literally the exact same words, just flip flop the subject and the object. Okay, if a white journalist had said that, they would be done. Okay, it'd be over. But racism is okay in America if it's directed at white people. That seems to be the case. Just as Islamophobia is the worst thing possible, but anti-Semitism in some circles is acceptable as long as it's you're just doing it from an anti-Zionist perspective. You're not being an anti-Semite. That's the funny part about that. Here's one more old tweet from this is from 2022 from Karen. We'll call him Karen because he's like a Karen Phillips. If this were the bubble, numerous players would have been asked about Buffalo yesterday, but that was a long time ago. Sports only serve as an escape from society if you're white. So according to Mr. Phillips, if you are black, then sports do not count as an escape from society. If you're Hispanic, if you're Asian, if you're Native American, if you're whatever, then sports aren't for you. That's just a representation, persecution, I suppose, some sort of odd supremacy play. And this is I'm picking on this one guy, but really I'm not. I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just highlighting this guy's absolute positive idiocy, because that's what it is. This is idiocy. This guy is being a moron. He thought he caught a kid doing blackface. And I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here. Okay. I'm saying he made a mistake, saw the picture and thought, oh, some dad dressed his kid in blackface. That's the best case scenario, that he made a mistake. What's worse is if he had actually looked further, because the picture, by the way, in the original post, I don't remember where the source was, but the original post actually had the picture of the kid, where you could see one side of his face and it's black, but then just like a couple paragraphs down, it showed the next picture, which shows his full face, which is black and red. The team's colors with the headdress. Very clearly, he was not trying to do blackface. Very clearly, he was just being a Chiefs fan, being a kid. So I'm giving Mr. Phillips the benefit of the doubt when I say he was just stupid. Because if he did this intentionally, if he intentionally tried to destroy this child's life, then he's not stupid. He's evil. And I'm just going to hope. Just hoping that the guy's just an absolute, total, stupid moron. That's your best case scenario, Karen Phillips, is that you're just mentally mediocre. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Speaking of mentally mediocre, let's go to Michael Cohen.
Personally, don't want to be led around. I don't want anybody telling me, as they're doing already right now, what you can and can't do in your bedroom. I don't want them, turning around and saying who can and who can't vote. All of a sudden, you're going to have somebody knock down your door, and it's going to be Trump's brown shirts pulling you out and sending you off to Guantanamo Bay. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, but I know him so well. I know what's on his mind, and I know what he intends to do. He's looking to scare the piss out of everyone so that nobody, and I mean nobody, like the way Kim Jong-un runs North Korea, he wants to run a United States of America that way. The way that Vladimir Putin controls Russia, he wants to control America. The way that Mohammed bin Salman controls Saudi Arabia, he wants to control America the same way. So a vote for Donald is a vote for the end of democracy. Who in their right mind would do such a thing? Who would support somebody who's looking to destroy the greatest experiment that exists on this planet?
It's funny. Yeah, and I can already. I'm almost glad that I'm not taking calls, because I can imagine the first call today would be, "Why the heck are you giving Michael Cohen, time on your show?" Number one, he's not in the news. He's trying to be in the news, but he's not. He's so irrelevant. He's less relevant than he's ever been. But the reason I brought up Michael Cohen and forced you all to listen to almost a minute and a half of this idiot is because there is one telling tell here. Okay, telling tell. Well, there is one thing that he said that is projecting and basically telegraphing what the left is going to be doing going forward. They're getting desperate. Okay, they know that they're in trouble with whether it's, and here's the thing, they're in trouble whether it's Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom. I'll admit there is one candidate who I would be at least a little bit concerned about, and that would be Michelle Obama. Sorry, not Big Mike. Didn't mean to say Big Mike. Michelle Obama. Okay. That would be a little bit concerning, not because I think that she's extraordinarily talented or likable in any way, but because there is the Obamas have a cult, and that would be a bigger challenge. I'm not saying that she would beat Donald Trump. It would be a bigger challenge than Gavin Newsom or Kamala Harris or Dean Phillips, okay, or anybody like that. And no, I'm not even going to talk today about RFK Jr. We're trying to get RFK Jr. on the show, on the phone. Yeah, trying to get him on the phone too. Trying to get him on the show. So I want to ask him a few questions before I even discuss his candidates, things that I like and things that I don't like. And I have talked about him in the past. But yeah, so the thing about the reason I brought in Michael Cohen's clip is because it highlights something very important. They're going to go far more once the primaries are over, once we get closer to the general election. We know with a certainty that the left and the never Trumpers, which technically you could call them the left as well, that they're going to go as hyperbolic as possible. They're not going to just settle for Trump will do this. Trump's going to be, he's not competent, or they're not going to go for the subtle attacks. They're going to go for the jugular. They're going to try to make you feel as if voting for him is voting for Mohammed bin Salman. Okay, they're going to try to make this comparison that if Trump gets into office for a second term, that he is going to become a psychopathic murderer, that he's going to unleash the full might of the United States military on the people, and he's going to kill everybody. He's going to start 15 nuclear wars. He probably made a deal with the aliens already, and he's just going to hand over human society, human civilization to the aliens so that we become slaves to them. I mean, folks, this is what's coming. This is what they're going to try to push on us. So getting unhinged, Michael Cohen desperately grasping at any form of relevance he can. This is his goal. Just very similar to other people we're seeing, such as Chris Christie. Chris Christie loved Donald Trump. First he hated him, then he loved him when he thought he was going to get a cabinet position, then he hated him again. People predictable, especially politicians or those affiliated with politicians, bureaucrats, aides, so predictable. every decision is made. And unfortunately, this is true about 99.9% of them. You'd be hard pressed to find somebody who makes decisions based strictly on what's best for the nation, what's best for this. It's always about, well, how will I look if I do this? What will I, what will my legacy be? How will I advance? How do I get my next job? What's my, where do I get paid the most? And unfortunately, let's be honest. Okay, let's be straightforward about this. Donald Trump is the same way. The reason that I like Donald Trump is his whole, I guess, self-serving attitude is about what's his legacy going to be. And to me, that's a good thing. Okay, that's a thing. When you've got somebody who's trying to be, trying to build the greatest legacy of a president possible, that means he's going to do whatever he can in his powers. He's going to try to do whatever he can to have the best presidency possible to make America as great again as possible. That's a good thing. Okay. Do I think that Donald Trump is, Mr. Oh, I'm humble and I'm just going to be a public servant? No, I think he wants to kick butt, and he wants America to kick butt. I'm okay with that. Okay. If he's doing it for self-serving reasons, fine. Is he getting bribed? Nope. So that, you could eliminate 60% of politicians out there. Most of them are being either bribed or bullied or blackmailed in some way to do whatever it is that they do. So we got that out of the way. He's not being bribed. He's losing money by being president. When he had the life, so to speak, before he even ever ran. So you can't say, oh, he's doing this to make an extra buck, even though they have tried to make that claim before. No. I mean, look, and I've said this a million times. I can point out a bunch of flaws about Donald Trump. There's a lot of things that I don't like about his policies, about his style, but I still support him 100% because he's the guy right now. He's the best person for the job amongst those who could get the job. Would I rather see? I don't know. I'm not even going to go down to any hypotheticals. I would take him over Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Joe Biden, RFK Jr. Anybody who's running, I would take Donald Trump every time, twice on Tuesdays. Okay, that's just me. I know that's not necessarily everybody's perspective, but that's my opinion. Yes, does he have challenges? You betcha. And who doesn't? So there's a sad story. Not sad as in like, oh, sob story. This is sad because we actually have to talk about this, which is unfortunate. Sorry, Todd, getting rid of your ads. My good buddy Todd Starnes he was talking about this yesterday and on his show over at Newsmax too. And it's Baptist Church hosts drag queen concert. A Baptist church. Before we get into it, I've got to say, for the record, I do not like most churches. I'm all for the church, as in like just not a building, not a congregation, not a denomination. I'm all in favor of the churches and what's described in the Bible. I'm all about loving and embracing the bride of Christ. But I would say that the vast majority, maybe not vast, we'll call it 55, 60, could be 95. I've never done a deep dive into it, but a large portion of churches in the United States of America are apostate. They're not good. Now, this is an obvious case right here. And if your church does things like this, if your church tries to excuse away sin, if your church pretends like, oh, there's no hell, there's no sin, there's no, if they try to pretend like the Bible is all just a good self-help guide to living your best life now, folks, find a new church. Okay, find a new church. I've had to bounce around from church to church to church, over the years, decades, because it is hard to find that great, good church. And for better or for worse, I know that a lot of people are against online churches. I do tend to like the ability to listen to pastors who are not necessarily, within driving distance from me. I like that expansive aspect of church. Does that help for fellowship? Absolutely not. And that is a humongous component of church Going to church is not just about listening to a pastor. It's about building community, building fellowship, meeting people that are not just like-minded, but people that you can pray with, pray for, who can pray for you. So there is definitely that component, which unfortunately I miss. But who knows? Maybe someday, Lord willing, we will find a fantastic local church. But here's one in the Virginia area, Richmond, that is not fantastic. It's actually quite abysmal. According to ToddStarnes.com, and I'm, by the way, going to have Todd on the show here very soon. Got to talk to his people. We had a nice conversation yesterday, but he and I actually saw this segment, which is why on yesterday's show, so that's why I wanted it up. Grace Baptist Church in Richmond, Virginia is hosting a drag queen concert. Yes, folks, a Baptist church. The church is featuring Flamey Grant. Wow. So-called Christian drag queen Grant, who is a man, is from the Bible Belt, who will move you, soothe you, help you heal some trauma, and always leave you laughing. Two things there. Number one, I don't want to go to church to laugh. Okay. Church, that's not to say that you can't laugh at church. And I've seen pastors that will really make, they're hilarious. Okay. They really are. But that shouldn't be their thing. Okay. You shouldn't go to church for the sake of laughter. You should go to church and you should laugh when something's funny, because a talented pastor might use some levity to break up serious moments, because the Bible is a serious thing. We're talking about salvation. We're talking about eternity. We're talking about heaven and hell. We're talking about end times, which it seems like we're in. And by the way, if your church does not talk about Bible prophecy, it might be time to find a new church. Because, folks, look around you. If you have read your Bible, if you've read Daniel, Matthew, of course, obviously, Revelation, Ezekiel. I mean, read Ezekiel 36. Look at what's happening in Israel and tell me that you're not seeing it. Okay? And then read Ezekiel 37, 38, and 39, and you'll be like, uh-oh. Uh-oh, spaghetti-o. So he had on WRVA talk show host Jeff Katz to join him. And I'm not going to read it. You can find this over at ToddStarnes.com and read that for yourself. It is an interesting article. But I do want to talk briefly about our sponsor. And this will actually lead in to this next story, because this show is made possible because of Genesis Gold Group. And it's funny that my on-air live read, which I'm not actually reading anything, but my on-air discussion of Genesis Gold Group goes between a story about churches and a financial story, which is coming up next, because Genesis Gold Group is, named after Genesis from the Bible, as in the first book of the Bible. Genesis Gold Group is a Christian company, unabashedly. Okay. I know there's other Christians that are in the gold industry, but I remember one guy I was talking to, actually a pastor, who he's going talking about Genesis Gold Group, interviewing people from Genesis Gold Group, and he's like, oh yeah, no, my gold company, they're Christian too, and I went and checked them out, because I was like, I don't see anything on their website. I've watched a couple of interviews. There doesn't seem to be any reference at all to God or Jesus or anything. He's like, oh no, he doesn't want to turn off the secular people. Look, if you're secular and you don't want to work with Genesis Gold Group because they're a Christian company, that's on you. Genesis Gold Group does utilize basically financial fellowship within their biblical fellowship goals and desires. In other words, from their perspective, good stewardship of your finances is important in this life. It might not have anything to do with the next life, and it doesn't, except for if you want to get into James 1, and we could talk about works versus faith. Obviously, I'm a faith guy, but there is a place for works. Works are important. You demonstrate your faith through works, and with your blessings, your life savings, your retirement, you should be engaged in proper stewardship. And this is where Genesis Gold Group comes in to play. So check them out at jdrgold.com, and they can help you. Genesis Gold Group can help you move your retirement, move your wealth over to a self-directed IRA backed by physical precious metals. So let's go to this story. This was actually posted yesterday. And it's funny because Michael Snyder, whenever I talk about his stories, Michael Snyder is somebody who I consider to be, number one, very brilliant. Number two, kind of a Chicken Little sometimes. Okay. I mean, I will, his stories, they cross my desk quite often. And sometimes he'll post 2 or 3 a day. And when they do, I always read them, and I usually make it all the way to the end in most of his stories. They're not very long, number one. Number two, they're very informative, right? Sometimes he does get, the name of one of his sites is the economic collapse blog.com. The name of one of his other sites is endoftheamericandream.com. Just the names of his sites should tell you kind of where his head's at. And I understand that because for years, maybe for decades, for I know, I don't track him all the way back, but for a long time, he's been talking about financial crisis, economic collapse. He's been talking about how the degradation of America, and a lot of us have been, but he's often, he will highlight things sometimes and point to an imminent end. Okay. Back in 2012, it's like, oh my gosh, or before 20, I'm sorry, 2008, I should say, it was the end of American civilization, according to a lot of these fear mongers. They saw the financial collapse, the real estate market, the bubble bursting, trillions of dollars lost worldwide. And it was like, this is it. There's no recovery. Okay. I wasn't like that. I figured that we would recover. It'll take a long time. It'll take years, maybe even a decade, but I knew that we would recover because they took the right steps to prevent it from being a total catastrophe. Now those steps were terrible. When I say the right steps, I mean the right steps for, it's kind of like, what is it? Cauterizing a wound. Okay. That long term, that sucks. Because you're basically burning skin and causing permanent damage to a limb, but in the short term, it could keep you from bleeding out. So sometimes you have to do that. That's what I saw happening in 08, 09. They're cauterizing the financial wound, which is going to leave a mark, literally, but it didn't collapse us. Praise God for that. Well, now I'm seeing it very possible that, the fear mongers from the past are coming out and looking at this, and they're saying a lot of the same things, except it is different. This is different. This is not the economic collapse of 08. This is not the Great Depression. This could be something far worse, a true, legitimate economic collapse, which could lead to a societal collapse here in the United States of America. That's why I'm so concerned, especially when it comes to the banking system. Now, let's get the article. The entire banking system is shaking, as by Michael Snyder, the aforementioned brilliant man. Why are big banks suddenly rushing to shut down so many local branches all over the nation? As I have discussed in previous articles, U.S. banks are currently sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars in unrealized losses. When financial institutions get into trouble, they start getting really tight with their money and they start cutting costs. In addition to laying off workers, our banks have been cutting costs by permanently closing local branches. For example, between November 12th and November 18th, was that like 2 weeks ago? The 6th largest bank in the United States initiated filings to close 19 more local branches. It's PNC, by the way. They've confirmed, that's the 6th largest bank, confirmed that closure of 19 more branches nationwide following staggering 203 branches closure earlier this year. So that's 222 branches that PNC has already closed just in 2023. Of course, back to the article, PNC has lots of company. During that exact same week, several other prominent banks made similar moves. JP Morgan, and this is where, by the way, when I say, when one bank starts closing branches, it could have just been bad money management. Maybe they were positioned in a way that's not beneficial with rising interest rates. We saw that with Signature Bank. Okay, we saw that with what was the other one? Silicon Valley Bank. Okay, it's not they weren't being stupid. They had just positioned their investments around the idea of permanent, essentially permanent, low or 0% interest rates. And when the interest rates started rising, they started losing. Okay, when one bank or even two banks start closing branches, it's like, okay, so that just happens. That's not anything to be alarmed about. When four or five or six or eight banks all start closing branches around the same time, now it's time to worry. Now it's time to be concerned. According to this article, again by Mike Snyder, JP Morgan Chase followed closely with 18 filings, 3 in Ohio, 2 each in Connecticut and South Carolina, 1 each in 11 states, including New York, Illinois, Florida, and Massachusetts. Okay, so there's JP Morgan. We got PNC, we got JP Morgan. That's 2. Uh-oh, wait, here's 3rd. Citizen Bank came in 3rd with 8 branch closures filings. Citizen Bank, it's pretty big. 6 in New York and 1 each in Massachusetts and Delaware. Uh-oh, there's more. Bank of America made 5 filings, 2 in New York and 1 each in Texas, Massachusetts, and California. You seeing the trend here? Massachusetts seems to be getting called out quite a lot. Same in New York. As a matter of fact, all 3 that we've mentioned have closed banks in Massachusetts and New York. What's going on there in these Democrat-run states? Citibank filed for 2 branch closures, and Sterling Bremer First National Bank of Hughes Springs, Windsor, FS and LA, and Aroostook County, FS and LA, made 1 filing each. So that sounded like 5, but there's actually 6 and 7. Altogether, 64 branches closed. Read that last sentence again. Altogether, banks filed to shut down 64 branches. That's just in 1 week, folks. Carrying on, is there any more? Is this the only negative financial indicator? No. Apparently there's more. Unfortunately, even more trouble is coming for our banks because the real estate industry is a total mess right now. And Michael Snyder often talks about the real estate industry, the real estate market really falling apart over at the economiccollapseblog.com. Says existing home sales have fallen to depressingly low levels, and we just learned that new home sales in the U.S. dropped 5.6% last month in October. It's a lot of homes. Sales of newly constructed homes fell 5.6% in October to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 679,000 from a revised rate of 719,000 in September, according to a report. Prices are falling as well. So the median price of a new single-family house sold in October fell by 3.1% from September to $409,300. Meanwhile, the commercial real estate crisis just continues to intensify, and I talked about this last week. Just check out the new numbers that were released several days ago by TREP. The volume of CMBS loans that are classified as delinquent increased by 49.4% during the 10 months through October to $27.91 billion. These are business loans, folks. How is that even possible? This is commercial real estate. That volume amounts to 5.07% of the $601.98 billion universe tracked by TREP. In contrast, delinquencies at the end of last year amounted to 3.03% of the $616.15 billion universe that then extent. Look, if you want to sit around and say, oh, you know what, I hear a lot of people saying, this is just part of the ebb and flow. We're just going through a downturn. I hear other people saying, we're just going to have to survive and hold out until Trump gets back into office. Oh, you know what? Don't worry. As soon as the war in Ukraine is over, things are going to get better. I hear a lot of excuses. I hear a lot of people saying why they're not concerned. And generally speaking, those people that are not concerned are people with a whole lot of money. Seriously. I mean, I'm not trying to, I'm a capitalist. I don't believe in, in hating the rich, but it does seem, at least in my circles, people that I talk talk to, the ones that are not concerned at all about what we're seeing, are the people that if there is an economic collapse, they have the physical assets. Their homes are paid for, their cars are paid for, they've got land, they've got guns, they've got food, they got gold, they got silver, they got crypto, they got everything they need. So it's like, okay, so if the dollar collapses, I'll be fine, is what they're thinking. So they can sit back and they can say, hey, there's really nothing to be concerned about. We're going to be just fine, because they don't want it to collapse. Just because they're prepared for it doesn't mean that they're sitting there hoping things will collapse, because there's other things that you can't prepare for in such a scenario. I think, a lot of people who are in good shape, will say, who are fully prepared financially, and physically, have the assets and the resources available to them to be able to sustain themselves. It's not like they're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I can't wait for the US dollar to go to zero. Can't wait for war with China. Can't wait for, maybe some of them are. Maybe the more diabolical and evil ones are like that. But for the most part, your average American is not going to be sitting there. Your average rich American, we'll call them, is not going to be sitting there hoping for collapse. Well, I guess some could. Maybe some do. But most of them do not. But these excuses that they're making, they're not real. Even if, let's say, we are able to keep things together, everything's going hunky-dory, and then Donald Trump is reelected, does that mean, hey, problem solved? No, it does not. Trump will, if he does win in 2024, he will inherit a nation in shambles. He'll be in a world, we are quickly, this world is quickly turning against the United States, more so than it ever has. This world is quickly shifting in a way that does not benefit us long term. Now, there are good things happening. I don't want to be Mr. Debbie Downer here and be like, oh, woe is me, it's all bad. No, there's some great things happening. We're seeing elections in South America, in Europe, across the globe, that give us hope, that hey, maybe there is some sense left in the world. We're seeing local elections here in the United States that are pointing to positives. We're seeing a trend. Now you can say, oh, but look at Virginia. Okay. Virginia, I think, was a matter. People will say, oh, it's the abortion issue that killed Virginia. No, I would say that you need to look really, really close. And what you will find is massive, widespread voter fraud in Virginia. Nobody's talking about it. I haven't heard really anybody talking about it other than those who are trying to point out the evidence and getting shut down. I mean, I had this one guy, we'll have him on the show next week. This one guy's like, look, I've got evidence. I've been trying to shop this around. I've talked to, well, I'm not going to out who he's talked to, but I've tried, I've talked to producers of some big shows, conservative shows, and I've even talked to little ones, and nobody wants to have me on. I don't understand. This is important stuff. We've got the evidence. We've collected it. I thought that people would want, especially conservatives and alternative media, would want to talk about this, but they didn't. They didn't want to talk about it. I would say at least part of it, and I explained this to this gentleman. I said part of it is because they really want the narrative to be that abortion is a bad issue for Republicans. And you might be sitting there listening to me right now thinking, well, yeah, it is. It's not. I need to do a show about that. I need to do an entire show demonstrating why abortion is not a bad issue for Republicans. Abortion is being poorly run as far as the messaging is being horribly run by the vast majority of Republicans. If you take people and you tell them the truth and you hammer them with the truth about abortion, the truth about who's affected, the truth about what actually takes place in abortions, the truth about the policies they actually want to enact, if you really take this to the people, start educating them about what can and should happen in a post-Roe v. Wade world, then it becomes a non-issue. I'm not saying they'll be like, oh, yeah, all of a sudden I'm super pro-life. No. We're not true, but we convince them that they have to change their worldview. We have to convince them that it's not going to be the end of their world if this law gets passed or that law gets passed. Look, I'm a big fan of transparency when it comes to politics, but I'm also a fan, perhaps even a bigger fan, of messaging that gets the job done. And we're not doing that with abortion. Again, it'll be better for me and for you if I put all these thoughts together appropriately rather than try to shoot from the hip on that issue, because it's an important one. We're not messaging right when it comes to abortion. But anyway, point being is that that's one of the reasons why people don't want to talk to the guy about massive widespread voter fraud. The other reason is because, hey, you get labeled. If you start talking about voter fraud, you get labeled an election denier. I don't care, unless you're a Democrat. Democrats can talk about voter fraud and they can actually get stuff done whenever they can demonstrate that voter fraud's been done against them. We've seen that in multiple cases just in the last month. I'll be talking about another case here in a bit where that seems to be effective. But hey, if you talk about voter fraud, you're one of those crazy QAnon people. Because apparently the only people that allegedly believe the 2020 and 2022 elections and now 2023 elections were stolen are just those crazy QAnon people. It's not people that actually look at evidence like me, people that actually dig deep, talk to people who've seen what's happening. We're just couldn't be us, right? We're not the ones that are election deniers, except I am. And we are. And hopefully many of you do realize that the 2020 election was stolen unambiguously. Hopefully you realize that Joe Biden did not receive more black votes than Barack Obama. Okay? I mean, if you think that he did, what you're saying is that you believe that black people prefer a racist over an actual black man. And that's stupid. That's just, again, you might as well be like Karan Phillips, just on the opposite side. And yes, 2022, massive widespread voter fraud in multiple states. I think all the elections were lost because of lost by Republicans. Why the Red Tsunami failed strictly because of voter fraud. A lot of it was failed because, again, going back to messaging, we can talk about Romney McDaniel all day. We could talk about the RNC. We could talk about failures of intentional failures on behalf of the uniparty swamp in many cases as to why certain people lost. But there was also widespread voter fraud. And yes, in 2023, there was also widespread massive voter fraud. It's still happening. It's happening in so many elections. I'm there to talk about that today. Let's go to I shouldn't say fun, a more fun topic here real quick. Let's go to here's a good one. Let's go to an idiot. This is Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona. Monday, I should say, which was yesterday. Yeah, Monday. Here's the moron.
We're going to set up follow-up calls with every governor we met with to make sure we're available. As I think it was President Reagan said, we're from the government. We're here to help. There are resources there, there's technical assistance there, and there's a playbook that could support the work you're doing. Count on us as a partner in this. Our students are waiting. Thank you.
I don't often face palm, but I do. I want to cover my face. I want to bury it because this guy's an idiot. For those of you, and I'm sure the vast majority of my audience is well aware, since you are the brightest, the most intelligent audience in the world. I can demonstrate that very clearly. But for maybe a handful of you who are not aware, maybe you just forgot. But when Reagan said those words, what he was saying was these are the nine most dangerous words, or the 9 scariest words, I think is what he said. The 9 scariest words you can ever hear. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. He was insulting the idea that the government helps. Now, generally speaking, if like AOC or somebody else would say that, it'd be like, haha, I wouldn't even talk about it. But this guy's the Secretary of Education. Okay? This guy is supposed to be the one who sets direction for public schools across the country. And here he is, semi-quoting. It wasn't even the right quote, but it's fine. It's off the top of his head, but quoting Reagan out of context and trying to make it something that Reagan was clearly using as a negative and trying to make it a positive. I don't know if he thought we were stupid, maybe. I don't know if he just misunderstood, if he didn't get the joke, because this was a joke essentially, that Reagan was saying during a press conference, or maybe he heard those words one day and he just thought, yes, that is so true. The people in government, they are here to help. Maybe that's what drove him as a child to want to get into a life of politics, become a bureaucrat, to lead an agency that does not need to exist. And no, the Department of Education does not need to exist at all. You can sort of make an argument for departments of education at the state level, sort of. I would even prefer that at the very least they all get neutered to the point to where they are more recommendation groups rather than policy groups. To me, I would love and I think this is the only way that you could ever clean up the public school system in general, would be to eliminate all departments of education, or at least, again, keep the state ones but neuter them, and leave the decisions up at the local level. Schools in Bethany, Oklahoma, are going to run very differently from schools in Miami, Florida. And it's funny because I should have used the example of Miami, Oklahoma, spelled the same way but pronounced differently. Miami, Oklahoma versus Miami, Florida. Point being is that based on geography, based on size, based on demographics, based on a dozen different factors, a school district should make different decisions for their children. In some cases, a school may need, for example, security. There's a video. I'm not going to play it. It's hideous. There was another school beating yesterday, brawl, as they were calling it, where a kid died. I didn't get to see that part of it, but I saw the video that was out on social media showing the genesis of the conflict. And this seems to be happening on a regular basis. Of course, we had the kid that was murdered, murdered a while back. It's recent news because some of the kids have been arrested for murder and are being charged as adults with murder. So that's good, except it's bad that 15 kids decided, hey, let's beat down this other kid. I'm not saying this is brand new and this has never happened in the past. It just seems like, and I'm saying this anecdotally, I don't have the stats, it sure seems like we're seeing more of it. Now, I know, granted, a big reason we're seeing more of it is because there's now cameras in every pocket, every hand. Okay, even in school, you got these teenagers, they're all just trying to get TikTok famous. They're all just wanting to get share this with their friends. Maybe they don't want to put on TikTok. Maybe they just want to share with their friends. I don't know why they do it. I don't know why. It's not just kids. It's adults too. Why is it that in the United States of America, our first instinct when we see something crazy, bad, or false happening, we pull out our phones? I could never. I know this with certainty. I'm praise the Lord. I've never been in the situation, but I know that if I saw something bad happening, an attack, I'm not going to be pulling out my phone. Okay. It's the last thing I will be doing. If it's an attack that I can prevent, then I'll go towards the attack. If it's an attack that I can't prevent, I'll go away from the attack. Okay? I mean, if 15 ninjas drop down if I'm shopping at a I was about to say Walmart, but that would never happen. If I'm at a mall or something, which also would never happen, but whatever. And 15 ninjas dropped out of the ground, or dropped out of the ceiling, and they had their swords out, and they're starting to slice people. Me, if I'm in the mall unarmed, I'm not going to challenge them. I'm going to take my family and run away. Okay? Different scenario. Yes, maybe there's a gunman targeting me directly or targeting my family. I'm going to go after that person. Let's say there's one assailant stabbing somebody. I'm going to go after that person in public. At no point would it cross my mind to pull out my phone and start filming. I don't get it. Maybe I'm old school. I don't understand that mentality whatsoever. Are we? Oh, no, we do have time. Okay, cool. We've got time for one more, and I had mentioned this earlier, so let's go ahead and get this story in before we go to station identification, I guess. Let me pull this up. It is Court Papers from Just the News. John Solomon's fantastic site. Court Papers say ex-Virginia election official on trial altered election results in 2020 election. Huh, crazy. I thought that the 2020 election was the freest and the fairest of all time. Isn't that what we were told? Continue to be told ad nauseum. Former Prince William County General Registrar Michelle White was indicted by a grand jury on 2 felony counts alleging corrupt conduct as an election official and making a false statement, and 1 misdemeanor charge of willful neglect of duty by an election officer last year. She has filed for a bill of particulars, which requires prosecutors to provide more details of her alleged wrongdoings. Yada, yada, yada. In a county where President Joe Biden received 54% of the vote in the 2020 election, two former Donald. Sorry, I always get caught on the phrase President Joe Biden. Okay, I don't like saying those words, and I'm not one of those guys. I used to say President Barack Obama. Okay, I think that the office deserves respect, but that may be the first time in my life, and it's just because I read it. I didn't catch myself. Usually, I didn't catch myself this time. I don't consider him to be my president. And this isn't like the unhinged, he's not my president, both in, 2017 and on when Trump was in office. And then there's still many on the conservatives, Republicans today say, he's not my president, Joe Biden. But they're not saying it because they believe that he stole the office. They're saying it because that he doesn't, they don't agree with him ideologically. Look, if you don't agree with a president ideologically, but you believe that president won fair and square, he's still your president. This is why, again, I used to call President Barack Obama. Okay, and some people say, well, but he wasn't really our president because he was born in Nigeria, and yeah, okay, well, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not going to, that's not. I didn't do enough research. I wasn't in politics back then to care enough. I still believe that the office of President of the United States deserved to be respected. And I still do. It's not like I've changed that perspective. But I don't like calling Joe Biden president because I think that he stole it. And when I say I think, and let's be clear, I think it was stolen on his behalf. I don't think that he was sitting there doing anything other than, Joe, just stay in your basement. Joe, don't do anything. Joe, take your meds. Joe, don't smell that girl. Don't you do it. Don't you smell. He's going over to the girl. Somebody stop him. Send in the white bunny. Anyway, you get the idea. That may be the first time I've ever uttered those words, just because I didn't catch myself. Anyway, let me redo that paragraph. In a country where Joe Biden received 54% of the alleged vote in the 2020 presidential election to former President Donald Trump's 4%, an election official at the time allegedly altered election results in the state's reporting system, leading to 3 grand jury indictments last year. Who heard about this last year? You'd think that this might be like a big thing on like Fox News or something like that, but apparently it wasn't. In September 2022, former Prince William County General Registrar Michelle White was indicted by a grand jury on 2 felony counts alleging corrupt conduct as an election official, making a false statement, and 1 misdemeanor indictment of willfully neglect of duty by an election officer. White's jury trial is set to begin January 16th of next year and go until January 26th. Why is it taking so long? I mean, this is something you'd think this was important enough to fast track, but apparently it wasn't. White had abruptly resigned in 2021 without explanation. When the Virginia Attorney General's office announced the indictments last year, the only additional information offered was that White allegedly violated the law between August and December of 2020. But details regarding the alleged actions were not given. This week, Just the News obtained documents from the Prince William County Clerk's office through a court records request regarding the 3 charges against White, which provides some additional information. I did read through them. It doesn't go into enough. We need more. But I want to highlight, though, and this is why I wanted to bring this story up. I wanted to highlight the dates. Violated the law between August and December of 2020. This wasn't a scenario where the massive widespread voter fraud got started the day before and continued on to a couple of days after election. This is planned out. this is sustained. And I would argue that the voter fraud that did take place in 2020 had been planned out for a very long time. The reason that we know this is because it was Democrats, such as Ron Wyden, who were leading the charge from the Senate to go after, wait for it, and this is back in early 2019, they were leading the charge going after Dominion, Smartmatic, the voting machine companies. And all of a sudden, strangely, they stopped. I said 2019. I think it was actually, they were having Senate hearings as late as 2020. But they stopped all of a sudden right before Joe Biden was started to be basically given the Democrat nomination. So very scary stuff. We do have to have a moment of silence, which normally I have something to play during this moment of silence, and it's just for station identification. So I guess I'm just going to sit here and stare at the camera. I know, I'll check chats. If you guys want to chat at me on Rumble. Okay, I think that's it. That's my moment of silence. You might wonder, why didn't I pray during my moment of silence? I don't pray on the air. I shouldn't say I don't, because I have, and I will, I'm sure, again. But I usually, I pray with intent. I don't just pray for the sake of prayer. Oh, it's prayer time. Let's pray. You should pray always. But I didn't want to use my station identification time to pray. So let's move to. I'm looking for the right clip. You know what? Let's go to this one. This is a great one because it's just to set the stage. I want you to watch very carefully, listen very carefully to not just what's being said, but how Fox News reacts to what's being said. This is in New York City.
Continue to come in. We are, I will say too, we're live on air, so, but, what do you think about what the mayor's doing, and what should the president and the White House be doing?
This is up to us. This is up to each and every one of us to stand up. Nobody's coming here for us.
Right.
We're here for ourselves. If we don't get up and fight for our city, nobody's coming for us. They're coming to destroy it. The reason why they're here is to steal our votes.
Right.
We're not going to be able to live. They're stealing our votes, our kids' future, my birthright. Our United States is great city that I refuse to leave. Do you understand? Nobody's coming for us. These elected officials aren't even elected. They're using absentee ballots. They're being selected.
They're operating without. What did you think that AOC, when she came out, and other members of Congress, and they had this press conference, what did you think about their comments?
They will never be allowed to walk down the streets again. Yes. They have destroyed our city, and New York, especially Queens, is woken up.
Let's pull away from this. You see the anger among
migrants.
Oh yeah. Fox News is going to pull away from that one. Any of the news channels would, and kudos to Fox News for letting it go on that long. But more kudos, much more kudos to that gentleman for expressing his desire to be ungovernable. That's really what this comes down to, folks. This comes down to being ungovernable. It's often said, but I see so few people actually doing it. It is necessary. It is not just important, it's imperative that we become ungovernable. Because the Constitution says that we are. The Constitution sets apart a government that is designed to prevent itself from taking our freedoms. I mean, if you read the Bill of Rights, just the first 10 amendments, just those alone, you'll see restraint after restraint after restraint against government. It's not against the people. They're not trying to hold us back. The Constitution is designed to keep us, within the boundaries of natural law, but empowered to not let government trample on us. This is what has made America strong over the last 2.5 centuries. And they're taking it away. They've been taking it away for, little by little for 150 years. And yet, what are we doing? Very little. We're not fighting back. They've placated us. And I'm going to get into more of that here in a bit, but I do want to, I had to play that clip because, this guy is passionate. This guy is real, and he's being affected. This is that came from the heart. And one of the reasons the interview, semi-interview, started off, with her kind of warning him. She knew, that reporter knew, hey, there's a chance this guy might say something foul, might use a curse word on live television. Okay, so she said, hey, we're on live television. She handled that just fine. But then once he started getting really into it and started saying, AOC cannot walk the streets anymore, they started fearing, Fox News, the studio started fearing that he's going to start talking about violence, and that's something that they don't want to be broadcast on their show. And look, I am not, to be clear, I'm not a fan of violence at all, unless it's in self-defense or unless it's in essentially revolution against an oppressive, a tyrannical government. We're inching closer to it every day. We are inching closer to that scenario where we may at some point be forced to take up arms. And God forbid, because that would be the end of the United States. But if it comes to that, in my humble opinion, it will be because there is no alternative. Because I do believe that there is common sense and lucidity. Are there radicals that are on both sides of the fence, by the way? Are there radicals that are trying to push civil war and what I would like to refer to better as revolutionary war? Absolutely. My stance is be ready for it. Just don't instigate it until it's time. And when will it be time? We'll know. We'll know. Because we'll see our government acting, crossing the line. Police state, martial law. Right now we're seeing it creep. We're seeing the police state surround us. And you might say, this is the time. This is where we've got to start the revolution, start the Civil War. It's not. Now's not the time. Now's the time for prayer. Now's the time to inform. Now's the time to prepare. But we're not to the stage where we have to go to war against our own government. That day may come. God forbid. But that day may come. I don't believe it's here yet. And maybe I'm in the minority, but I don't think I am. It wouldn't be a JD Rucker show, if I didn't at least talk a little bit about the election. Yeah, it's funny because every day I think, okay, so that's my election coverage for the week. I don't like talking about the election at this stage because we're in primary season, and as I've voiced many, many times, I think the primaries are over. I do. I think the primaries never really even started. I think there was maybe a glimmer of hope for some of the Republicans who thought maybe they could beat Donald Trump, but at this stage, this isn't a primary. At this stage, this is who's the safety net? Who's going to be the person who is nominated in case Donald Trump is taken out by the deep state? That's it. Nobody's going to catch him. Nobody's going to catch him. Nobody's going to catch him. No Republican can defeat Donald Trump in the primary unless the deep state takes him out through lawfare or through other means. Those are the only two choices. Either Donald Trump is the nominee or the deep state takes him out. That's it. There is no scenario where Nikki Haley wins is able to defeat Donald Trump in primary elections, in caucuses, or anything like that. It's not going to happen. Anyway, but I say that every week, and then stories pop up because people are talking about it. So, hey, all right, fine. I'll spend a little bit of time. Not much. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it. This one comes from my good friends over at Trending Politics. Mark Steffen It says major donors come back to Trump after failing to find alternative. And the reason I wanted to bring this up, I talked about this a bit yesterday, but I wanted to bring this up again because we're seeing the sooner this happens across the board, the better off the Republican Party will be. I would argue, by the way, that having these primaries has been very refreshing. I'm glad that the primaries happened. I'm glad that there were people who tried to challenge Donald Trump, because all it did is reiterate that Donald Trump is the Republican Party. As of today, Donald Trump represents a majority of Republicans. And that's why I'm glad, because let's say nobody challenged Trump, then the never Trump. Oh, he was the de facto nominee, but nobody really likes him. Well, now we've had to demonstrate it. Yeah, no, seriously, we do like him. Oh, yeah, you threw DeSantis at us. You threw Chris Christie at us. Who likes Chris Christie? I don't think Chris Christie likes Chris Christie. I seriously have never met a single human being or talked to a single human being or even seen a tweet by a single actual human being who likes Chris Christie as a person, as a politician, or as anything. I know he won elections in New Jersey. I know that he was the in a deep blue state, he was able to be a quote unquote Republican. I know that he loved on Obama and he hated on Trump, but whatever. Nobody likes Chris Christie. I don't think a whole lot of people like Nikki Haley. Not anymore. Yeah, there was a time perhaps when she was in the administration, when she was the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and maybe even when she was governor. Maybe there were a lot of people that liked her back then. But she's not exactly the most likable person. Unless you're a neocon. Now, if you're a neoconservative, then she's your Dick Cheney. Okay? She is your Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels, as Vivek Ramaswamy said. But anyway, let's get to this article. High-level donors within the Republican Party are starting to come around on former President Donald Trump's candidacy after spending years searching for an alternative. One of the clearest signs yet that the Republican frontrunner has essentially clinched up the nomination. Okay. Anyway, ABC News reports that some of the party's biggest philanthropists, including Home Depot co-founder Bernie Marcus and oil and gas mogul Harold Hamm, are switching horses after previously backing Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, respectively. In November, Marcus announced his support in a surprise op-ed in Real Clear Politics. There's a quote from Marcus. I understand the frustration of some of my Republican friends who do not like or are offended by things Donald Trump does and says. I too have been frustrated at times, but we cannot let his brash style be the reason we walk away from his otherwise excellent stewardship of the United States during his first term in office. And that statement, folks, look, this guy, anyone who's not familiar with Bernie Marcus, dude is wicked smart, okay? He is one of those guys where would he have made a good politician? Absolutely. But he was too smart to be a politician. I'm serious. He knew that he knew the fallacies, the shortcomings, the dangers of getting directly into politics. So he decided, hey, I'm going to do business and I'm going to support. I'll be politically minded, but I ain't going to run. He continued, I endorse him not only because he has the best chance of winning the general election, but because he is the best person to take on and dismantle the administrative state that is strangling America. And this is a point that a lot of people make. I see a lot of DeSantis fans, DeSantis supporters. They talk about what DeSantis has done to the administrative state in the state of Florida. And I have to remind people that is the vast majority of that aspect. Now, I'm not talking, I think DeSantis has done some amazing things in Florida, by the way. But I think that when it comes to dismantling the administrative state, it should have come more from, in my opinion, more from his office. But it didn't. A good chunk of it, a great chunk of it, came through legislation. Now, here's the thing. So, and please pay attention, because this is an important aspect to understand. When it comes to laws, for example, that comes from the legislative branch, right? We all know this. We've all taken civic class. We're not students in modern day public schools. Most of us, I would say most of my listeners, actually learned some things in school. back when we went to public schools, when they weren't indoctrination centers. Maybe they were and we just didn't notice, but I don't think they were. Okay. Remember, I was there. We didn't talk much about any politics. We definitely didn't tell each other have pronouns or anything like that. I mean, we knew the pronouns were I'm a he. That's unquestionable, right? But so, the legislative branch, they put the laws together, but to some extent, the executive branch does contribute to that. The executive branch has to tell the branch, hey, for us to sign, for the governor or the president to sign these bills or this bill into law, we want to see this, this, and this. There's input given, in other words. That's when it comes to making laws. That is the primary job of the legislative branch. When it comes to the administrative state, it's the other way around. Okay, the administrative state determines funding. That's very true. I'm sorry, the legislature determines funding for the administrative state, but the administrative state itself is still operated and controlled by the executive branch. Okay, so they can fund or defund. The legislature can fund or defund aspects of the administrative state, but there's an easier solution. You can actually, through by doing it legally, the executive branch, the chief executive, whether that's the president or the governor, has vast powers to be able to curtail or adjust or realign or even in many cases completely abolish aspects of the administrative state. It should not be the legislature that takes down the administrative state. That's the secondary thing. That's what you do. This is why, when we talk about various agencies, you don't hear the Congress, members of Congress saying that we're going to abolish or dismantle this, that, or the other. They always talk about we're going to fund them. Abolishing or dismantling can only be done by the executive branch when it comes to the administrative state. Okay, I hope that I made that clear because this is where right. Because Marcus was saying that he believes that Trump is best suited to dismantle the administrative state. I wholeheartedly agree. And when people make the argument that DeSantis is actually doing it and Trump didn't do it in his first term in office, it's half true. Yes, many aspects of the administrative state in Florida have been curtailed, but not enough of it has been curtailed by the governor's office. A lot of it was done through the legislature, and that's not how it should have been. That demonstrates weakness, in my opinion. Now, people will argue, you know what? Trump had he said he was going to drain the swamp. You're right. In his first 4 years, he didn't drain the swamp. Not nearly enough. He should have done much more. In the second term, he will be able to do much more. And that terrifies. This is why I played the clip of Michael Cohen. What Michael Cohen's saying, and he's playing on the idea that is actually partially true. What he was saying without actually saying it is that a second term for Trump means that he will be unleashed. We all remember, when caught on a hot mic, Barack Obama talking to the Russians saying, hey, tell your guy is my second term, so I'll be more flexible with how we deal with you. No, that wasn't an attempt at an Obama voice. I don't do impersonations. I can barely impersonate myself. Okay. But, that being unleashed, that whole second term mentality. Okay. First term, well, and this is across the board. Joe Biden might be the exception. I'll talk about him here in a minute. But across the board, presidents of the United States, they have 2 terms. Okay. Their first term is entirely done to earn them a second term. That's it. Okay. Everything you do in your first term as president is to win a second term. And everything you do in your second term is to build your legacy. This is what Obama did. This is what Bush did. This is what Clinton did. This is what George H.W. Bush would have done if he didn't get beaten. This is what Ronald Reagan did. To some extent, people, and other conservatives like to put Reagan on a pedestal as if he was perfect, but no. Okay, his first term, he did everything. He did everything from a semi-populist, mostly conservative perspective to try to win a re-election. In the second term, it was all about building his legacy. And you can go back, obviously Carter, Ford did not get second terms. Nixon should have had a full second term. He would have gone for his legacy. Look, a Trump that's unleashed, that doesn't have to worry about re-election, that is building his legacy, will take down the administrative state. If, and there's a big if he has the right people around him. I'm not talking about just, the obvious ones. We don't want Anthony Fauci. Well, duh. We figured that one out long ago. But what about, is he going to get another? I mean, is he going to get? Let's face it, he made some awful choices, not just in the beginning, but also even his secondary choices and his tertiary choices for his cabinet, for the people that he surrounded himself with. I mean, H.R. McMaster, I don't know where that even comes from. How in the world was he in the White House? Rex Tillerson, really? Okay, at least with Jeff Sessions, I can sort of understand it, because Jeff Sessions was the first. He was definitely qualified to be Attorney General. He was the first senator to endorse Donald Trump in a state that Trump needed desperately to win in the primary. Sessions came out and endorsed him. But he was a disaster as Attorney General. If it wasn't for Jeff Sessions, if Trump had picked out an Attorney General with cojones, a real Attorney General, a good one, then the whole Russiagate thing would never have even happened. I mean, it would have that really hampered Trump's first term for a long time, and it should never have happened. And then and the funny part is, Sessions was only the second worst Attorney General. Don't even get me started on Bill Barr, who came late. So you can't say Trump picked bad people to start, but then he replaced them with good people. He didn't. He went from chief of staff. He went from Reince Priebus to what's his name? John, I forgot his name now. To Mick Mulvaney. Really? Then ending with Mark Meadows, which, by the way, I know this is probably unpopular for me to say. I do like Mark Meadows. Okay, I've had lunch with Mark Meadows. He is a patriot. We'll see what pans out with all these trials and whatever. He claims that he hasn't turned on Trump. We'll see. If he hasn't, then awesome. Put him back in. Maybe not as chief of staff. Bring him in as something else. I would rather see a chief of staff, which people don't realize. I don't think enough people understand that the chief of staff is arguably the most powerful non-president, more powerful than the vice president in many ways. It's funny because it's not even constitutional. That's a whole other discussion for another day. Let's get to some of these articles. It's funny. I left that one up. So I forgot to take it off full screen. Silly me. Here's a new one. Talk about a disaster. This is Karl Rove says polling shows Americans believe Biden and Trump are too old for presidency. I'm not even going to read this. I just wanted to get the headline up there, because this is Karl Rove. I wanted to I guess you could say taint my or set up my perspective on this by saying, if you disagree with me, then you agree with Rove. And who agrees with Karl Rove? I don't think Karl Rove agrees with Karl Rove. And for some reason, his name is hard to say. At least it is at 6:22 in the morning. So here's why I wanted that story up. It's incorrect. Neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump are too old for the presidency. And a lot of people are talking about age. We've even heard some conservatives who are talking about age restrictions for politicians. Folks, it has nothing to do with age. Okay, it has a little bit to do with age, but it really comes down to mental acuity. It comes down to a person's mental qualifications. John Fetterman, for example, is not. Nobody would say that he's too old to hold his position. But many people, including Democrats, would say that his mental acuity after his stroke is not there. He requires, when people are interviewing him, he has to have the questions put on a screen for him to read. And when he answers them, oftentimes the words that he wants to say aren't the words that actually come out of his mouth. I feel bad for the guy for having a stroke. Okay. But if somebody has those challenges, would you want that person doing, I mean, I could name a dozen, probably 24 jobs off the top of my head that you wouldn't want that person to do. So him being a U.S. senator is very, very bad. Okay? Are you with me on this? Donald Trump's mental acuity is very strong. Is he as sharp as he was 20 years ago? I don't think so. I think that he is perhaps smarter, but I don't think that he's I've seen the interviews. He was extraordinarily quick on his feet before. I mean, he could take any topic and you ask him about it, he can talk intelligently about it. I think today it's not about, he does not lack the intelligence for the job. Obviously, he does not lack the judgment for the job. But I think that, this happens when you get older, that you maybe speak a little bit more slowly. And perhaps you can't quite remember things as easily. That's part of aging. So when I say age doesn't have anything to do with it, it's not that it doesn't. It's that that's not the determining factor. Donald Trump can be president of the United States. I would say his based upon, and I know people can deteriorate fast, as we've seen with Joe Biden. But Donald Trump has well more than 4 years. There's zero chance that Joe Biden has 4 years. Okay. Joe Biden is 4 years overdue. Okay. I think that the last time he had the mental acuity to be president of the United States was more than 4 years ago. If you want to see, go watch his speech during the Democrat National Convention of 2016 when they were nominating Hillary Clinton. During that speech, he sounded like a different man. He was a different man than he was in 2020, let alone today. Okay? Between 2016 and 2020, he deteriorated rapidly. That's why they kept him in the basement. They rigged the election, kept him in the basement, and we're hoping that people would remember the older Joe Biden, who still was loaded with gaffes. Remember when the worst thing about Joe Biden, at least what corporate media would report on, was his gaffes. Oh, Joe Biden made another gaffe. Oh, oops, Joe Biden said that you can't walk into a convenience store without hearing an Indian accent. Racist much, Joe? That was the worst part about Joe. Now, obviously, it's corruption, bribery, mental challenges. The guy is not fit for president, but it's not because of his age. I mean, you could say that his age contributed to his mental ailments. I just want to make sure that people don't go down the slippery slope of saying Joe Biden's too old. Joe Biden's too old. Joe Biden's too old. That's not that's not the reason that he can't be president. Joe Biden's mental acuity is gone. Other 81-year-olds might be able to do better. I mean, I would ask anybody. I don't know how old Thomas Sowell is, but somebody try to debate him. The dude is ancient. Okay? I mean, he's legitimately really old. I don't know. Somebody look it up. How old is Thomas Sowell? I don't have it on me here, but he's definitely older than Joe Biden. And he has the mental acuity. He could be president of the United States today very easily. Okay? I would not want to debate the guy. He would run circles around me. He would run circles around you. He's smart. He's wicked smart. And he's old. So don't talk about age. Talk about mental acuity, because Trump's age is not far off from Biden's. There's a reason why Karl Rove is trying to go out there and make it an issue of age, because he knows that Trump is only a couple of years younger than Biden. So he hates Trump. He wants neocon Nikki in office, or he wants to try to convince Glenn Youngkin to run, or he wants to somehow give Ron DeSantis a boost more so than his heels and his boots. I don't know what Karl Rove's justification is. I just know that never listen to Karl Rove. Friends, don't let friends listen to Karl Rove. I said it. There's an interesting interview. We'll call them juggernauts. Conservative, populist is probably the better word for them. Juggernauts met yesterday. This is the first time I'd ever even heard of them talking, at least on air. Maybe there was past interviews that I don't know about. But Tucker Carlson interviewed Steve Bannon. And it's funny because they were talking. It's like, of all the topics to talk about between Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon, they were talking about Ireland, which is an important topic. I just don't know if it's the topic that you want Tucker Carlson talking to Steve Bannon about. But then I watched parts of it, and there was a clip where I thought, you know what, that's important. It might not be what I want them to talk about. I want them to talk about America more, but because they are both America First people, very much so. But they talked about Ireland. This one's a good clip. Let's play this one.
So it seems like Ireland's, of course, a small country, an island in Western Europe, but it seems like this is kind of almost a metaphor for what's happening across the West. What do you make of the rioting there and the government's response to it?
Well, look, you've been to Hungary. Viktor Orban has led this fight for years and has tried to get his country, the sovereignty of it, to stay away from what's happening in Germany and places like Ireland. Ireland's probably one of the worst, if not the worst, because the political class has totally sold out the people. They've had, I think, 125,000 immigrants in the last year. That is the same equivalent if all of Joe Biden's 9 million illegal alien invaders here in our country all came within 1 year. That's the impact it's had on Ireland. And they're all on the public dole. There's been 100,000 Ukrainians in 18 months or 20 months since the war started. 100,000 Ukrainians all on the public dole, all paid for out of the Irish budget. Now, some of that money is given by the EU, but the Irish politicians are by far the worst that are bought off by the EU. They're the biggest globalists. They've sold out the sovereignty of the Irish. And you're seeing a natural blowback, and you're really seeing it among working class people in the cities, Irish nationals, Irish citizens, whose family have been there for generations and generations and generations and have nothing to show for it, and also in the rural communities. So Ireland is a powder keg. And I think what you saw the other day in the response by the Garda, the response by the authorities was immediately to go after Conor McGregor and other folks who were saying, hey, we need to address this. We need your proclamations are no longer good enough. We need to see a plan of action because there's been enough of these immigrants attacks on citizens, including a year ago where there was, I think, a murder of a school teacher by an immigrant. So the Irish people, I think, have had a belly full of it, but you're seeing this is across the West. And it started with a mass immigration in the 60s and 70s, but really been picked up since the Syrian civil war and what the Germans did back in 2014.
Now, the reason that particular clip was so important to me is because of one person. And that one person is Gavin Newsom. You might be like, well, what does Gavin Newsom have to do with Ireland? The Irish government today, as Bannon had pointed out, is extraordinarily radical. I would disagree it's the most radical in Europe, but it is extraordinarily radical and is very much aligned. If you listen to the talking points, I should have probably just gotten their dude and played him, because listening to him, all I could think of, and maybe it's because I'm here in communist California, but all I could think of was, man, he's using the same talking points that Gavin Newsom uses all the time. He has the same style, the same just super ultra creepiness, American Psycho, Christian Bale, style to him. And what they're seeing, what they're experiencing in Ireland is what we would experience if Gavin Newsom were ever to ascend to the Oval Office. Now, I know a lot of people, a lot of Trump fans are thinking, they're talking about this debate. I don't know if it's going to be a big debate. I don't even know if I'm going to watch it. I probably will. Not for DeSantis, but for Newsom, because I've only seen him. Last time I saw him do a debate was years ago, and he's awful. But I want to see if he really is a challenge. to Trump. So I may watch on Thursday, watch the debate between DeSantis and Gavin Newsom. Again, just to call it, I guess, spying, pulling a Jim Harbaugh, spying on the competition. But we'll see, because I do believe there's a chance, a very good chance, that he could be the guy that's going to be propelled, either during the convention, before the convention, maybe even I don't know, after the convention. I don't know the legalities or the way that the Democrat Party works, or how they will try to get rid of Joe Biden. I do believe they will, by the way, try to get rid of Joe Biden. I don't think that Joe Biden is going to run. Okay, I don't. I do not believe that Joe Biden is their plan for 2024. The reason that I don't think that is because there's been really no mention of replacing Kamala Harris. If they had replaced Kamala Harris, or if they were talking about replacing Kamala Harris, give her an ambassadorship or something and say, oh, she's better used here. If they were replacing her, I would say, yeah, sure, they're gonna elect Joe Biden, and he's gonna go away really quickly, and we'll have Vice President Michelle Obama stepping in and becoming president. Then I would think, okay, so they'll stick with Joe and then just get rid of him then. Since they haven't been, and there's still plenty of time, this still may be the plan. But whatever their plan is not Joe Biden, okay? They do not expect, he'll be 85, 86? There's no way he can make it through, okay? There's zero chance that he can make it through a second term. None. I mean, they have done everything they can to prop him up to make it through his first term. They installed him knowing that at any moment he could go down. And the only reason I truly believe this, the only reason that he's been allowed to continue, why they have done so much to prop him up, to fill him full of ketones or bee pollen or something, or to replace him, there is that theory, and it's not a terrible theory, that's not actually Joe Biden. I mean, I didn't get to watch it, but apparently there's a video that's going viral about this guy showing how masks can work. How this new masking technology, you can actually take somebody and make them appear to be Joe Biden. And if you ever compare, by the way, if you ever compare Joe Biden's face from a couple of years ago, you can see there's a distinct cut. Like, there's no slow transition. There's Joe Biden when he had those angry eyes, and then there's Joe Biden today. And you don't see, it's like there's a missing link, okay? There's a missing link. There's no transition between the two. He was angry-eyed Joe Biden, and his ears were in a different position, and now all of a sudden, he's soft-eyed Joe Biden with different ears. Again, I'm not going to say that definitively that that's not Joe Biden. I don't even know if I believe that. I think it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. But either way, they have, at least, let's say it is Joe Biden, they've been propping him up through drugs, through some sort of, voodoo, witchcraft. I don't know. They've been doing something to keep him going. And I think the only reason they've done that is because Kamala Harris was a disaster. And maybe that was Joe Biden's brilliant, strategy. Maybe he thought, oh, they're going to try to get rid of me. Let me pick the one person that can be less trustworthy than I am to be president. Let's get Kamala Harris in there. I think that had he selected, say, Karen Bass or somebody, even Bottoms out of Georgia, if he had taken and put somebody else in as his VP, maybe he would already be gone. Okay, maybe he would be. But I do believe they are going to replace him either before the primaries, which are coming up, so that's less likely. They might replace him during the primaries, which seems possible. I think the most likely scenario is that they let him go through the primaries unscathed, then something weird happens, so maybe some sort of medical emergency, and that's when they have to decide at the convention through the delegates, take the vote away from the people, and then they handpick who they want to be the Democrat nominee, and possibly even the Democrat president. I would love for Joe Biden to continue, because I think that Trump will absolutely obliterate him. I think that Trump obliterated him in 2020, of course, if we're counting votes, not ballots. If we're counting just votes, actual American citizens voting, I think Trump blew him away. But obviously the ballot counts were manipulated in multiple states, which is why Joe Biden was installed. But anyway, I don't think they can do enough voter fraud for him to be able to, quote unquote, win a second term. That's why I think they're going to replace him. And also because I don't think that they can make an argument that he has the mental acuity to handle a second term. This next story is near and dear to my heart, mostly because I own a beef company, and we sell freeze-dried beef. So there's that, but it's also near and dear to my heart, and I'm talking about it today, whether I owned a beef company or not, because this is terrifying. Not to me, not to those. If you're prepared, listen, if you are living off-grid and you have plenty of those resources I mentioned earlier, you got your gold and silver, you've got your crypto, you've got you own your land and your home and your vehicles and everything, you own it all outright, you have no debt, and you got tons of food, and you got your garden, and you got your chickens, maybe you got some cows, maybe you got a goat, you got your solar or wind or whatever, you got your own energy supply, all that covered, then you're in good shape. For the rest of us, okay, we are in the process, hopefully, Lord willing, you are as well, if you're listening, friends, we're in the process of trying to get built up because of this. It's an article by Christina Layla over at The Gateway Pundit titled, Eat Bugs, Eat the Bugs, and Live in a Pod. United Nations to tell first world countries to limit meat consumption in food's first net zero plan. And I'm going to actually talk about this further tomorrow because there's a big article over I believe it was at Yahoo, but a much bigger article talking about this stuff. But let's start with this one from the Gateway Pundit. Eat bugs and live in a pod. Climate change zealots, communists, are not only coming for your gas-powered vehicles, they want to destroy the cattle and farming industry under the guise of reducing carbon emissions with a net zero plan. The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, is expected to roll out its food guidance for first world countries in an effort to reduce carbon emissions. The message to rich countries: consume less meat. The new food system is expected to be unveiled at the COP28 summit next month in Dubai. This is a quote from Bloomberg. Nations that overconsume meat will be advised to limit their intake, while developing countries, where underconsumption of meat adds to a prevalent nutritional challenge, will need to improve their livestock farming, according to the FAO. So on one hand, they're saying, hey, you rich countries, you're eating too much meat. And on the other hand, they're saying, hey, you poor countries, you need more meat. Which one is it? I mean, it's like saying, hey, you know what? We want fewer gas-powered cars in Western countries, but we want more gas-powered cars in Africa. I mean, it's if they're bad, right? I mean, surely they can come up and start using these meat alternatives. As a matter of fact, because the numbers are so bad in impoverished nations, maybe that's where they should be focusing on getting the bugs to, getting the lab-grown meat to. I'm not saying that would be a good thing. I'm saying that why are they pushing it on us? Why are they trying to get us to reduce when they know that there are people out there that need more protein? Well, the answer is obvious, because they can charge a heck of a lot more to an American leftist or an American government that forces us to stop eating actual real meat that was raised in a pasture, right? They can make more money off of it. It infuriates me knowing that this stuff is obvious. This stuff is very straightforward. This stuff is unambiguous. Their agenda is crystal clear. There was a time, the whole reason that Alex Jones and people like that, the reason that they were ridiculed so much in the past was because the ideas that they were putting out there seemed to be debunkable, Today, you can't debunk this stuff. Why? Because they're actually saying it. The powers and principalities, the liberal world order, if you will, the globalist elite cabal, they're out there. They're just outright saying it. They're telling us their plans. In this case, they're telling us, hey, we want you to eat less meat. We're going to do anything we can to prevent you from eating meat. Why? Because meat is allegedly bad. At least pasture-grown meat. Now, lab-grown meat, which has been demonstrated to be 25 times more harmful for the environment pound for pound than pasture-raised meat. But hey, they don't talk about that part. Lab-grown meat, that'll be bugs, that'll be fine. It's funny because the company I was mentioning, here we are on the Gateway Pun. I didn't even notice this until now. I usually skip over the ads, but in this case, ad right there, 7 reasons to stock up on long-term storage premium beef right away. I appreciate the Gateway Pundit. I appreciate the fact that they are that we sponsor them as we sponsor this show. And when I say we, I'm talking about freedomfirstbeef.com, which you can see on the screen right there, right down there. If you're watching, freedomfirstbeef.com, use promo ER, and you'll get 15% off because it's expensive, but you do need to stock up. This is sous vide, so it's cooked. It's one ingredient, beef. We don't even add salt. Okay, the reason we cook it sous vide is for maximum retention of nutrition, of protein, and of consistency. Once it's sous vide, then it's freeze-dried, put into Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers so that it can have up to a 25-year shelf life. 25 years. Now, Lord willing, we are still eating on it in 25 years because that would mean that, hey, they didn't take away the beef. Hey, I was wrong. And so was the Gateway Pundit, and so were all these other people, the Epoch Times, Breitbart. Alex Jones, everybody was wrong about the idea that they're going to try to prevent us from eating actual real beef. Unfortunately, I would say that the vast majority of the bags of beef that we sell over at freedomfirstbeef.com are not going to last 25 years, not because they couldn't, because they're going to be eaten. This is long-term storage food, and Lord willing, it will stay as long-term storage food versus us being forced to eat it next month, next year, or even in 5 years. I don't want that to happen. But just in case, it is time to prepare. They're coming out and saying it, folks. They're saying, we don't want you to eat steak. That's why we're selling ribeye, New York strip, tenderloin, sirloin. We're selling the good stuff. This is not beef crumbles. You can get cheaper beef, by the way. You can go and get beef crumbles from these prepper outfits. And if you've ever had rehydrated beef crumbles, you'll understand why they call it beef crumbles. Because it's basically meat-flavored porridge. I don't want to go through the apocalypse eating meat-flavored porridge. But hey, that's just me. Maybe I'm the crazy one. This one. Speaking of health, for those of you who are watching, not just listening, if you're watching, you'll see that I am we'll say I'm a rotund man. I am robust. I am wider than your average man, but I am losing weight. I'm losing weight on the ketogenic diet, and no, I don't have a keto sponsor. I'm a big fan of it, and I have been a big fan for a long time. Now you might be wondering, how could I still be so large if I'm on the ketogenic diet? It's because I don't do it for the sake of losing weight. I am starting to lose weight. I've lost like 10 pounds in the last month or so. I am starting to lose weight based on exercise, but I am a fan of the ketogenic diet because of the health benefits, because certain things are bad for you, right? And most of those things are sugars, carbohydrates. In my humble opinion, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a doctor, but in my humble opinion, based upon what it does, I would say that the ketones are the superior form of energy, and that the ketogenic diet does make you better and healthier, whether you want to lose weight or not. But with that said, there's more than just carbs and sugars that are bad for you. There's also certain oils, and this is the reason up ketos, because it's not a diet where you just eat as much fat as you can. You have to be very selective with your fats. And one of those fats that you don't want to eat, whether you're on the keto diet or not, are vegetable oils. I don't know. It's unfortunate. I could not source this, but I'm going to play it anyway. It's just a short video talking about vegetable oils, but call this a scare tactic. I'm fear mongering about vegetable oils because I don't think that they're very good for you. If you do, if you enjoy your McDonald's fries, watch this video because maybe you won't after you watch it. And let's say you don't enjoy McDonald's. Let's say you just, you're okay with canola oil or whatever. Watch this video. Stand by.
Vegetable oils belong in the engines of cars, not in your food.
These are not real food products. These are products made in factories. These are products that require heat and chemicals and high pressure to extract what little oil there is.
The heat and chemicals used in the manufacturing process oxidizes these delicate seed oils. When you eat oxidized vegetable oils like soy, canola, corn, and safflower or sunflower, they create free radicals throughout your body that are highly inflammatory and known to cause heart disease and cancer. Why are we always trying to eat more antioxidants? To combat free radicals like the ones found in refined vegetable oils.
And then they're used by restaurants in the most carcinogenic way possible. They heat them, reheat them, cool them off, heat them again, and use them for a week. So switching to vegetable oils or seed oils was probably a terrible idea in the first place.
One researcher from the University of Minnesota went to a variety of fast food restaurants in her neighborhood and purchased French fries, and then took them back to her lab for testing. She found numerous compounds of toxic aldehydes in the fries. Aldehydes are known to cause gene mutation, alter RNA and DNA, and trigger massive inflammation in the body.
Vegetable oil is highly toxic, and anyone who advises people to eat vegetable oils is also giving misinformation.
I tell my clients to avoid the industrial seed oils as much as possible.
Vegetable oils belong in the engines of cars, not in your food. Refined vegetable oils are one more reason you should avoid fast food and processed food. If it comes in a bottle or a box, it probably contains vegetable oils, from crackers to cookies, mayonnaise to salad dressings, baby food, and even baby formula.
I've been called a hippie by some of my peers, less today than before. But we've been trying to eat healthier as a family for over a decade now. My wife was taking us to Whole Foods even back in the days when it's like, let's just go to the regular grocery store. It's cheaper. And she's like, no, let's go here. I remember we bought a juicer one time. and we bought this juicer. She bought me, it was for me. It was for me because I don't really care for vegetables. So she's like, well, but you like vegetable juice, and I do. And she's like, okay, so let's get you a juicer. So we went and got a juicer, and we went and got $77 worth of organic vegetables over at Whole Foods. $77 worth. And we were able to get approximately one glass out of it. I'm like, sorry, honey, I can't do it. She's like, I understand. I don't even know where the juicer is. I think we literally only used it that one time. And I'm not ripping on juicers. I'm sure that we were just doing it wrong. I'm sure we could have picked out better vegetables, or maybe we weren't using it right, or we weren't extracting. But anyway, point is that yeah, I am a big fan of eating much more naturally and avoiding vegetable oils at all costs. Now, this has been a relatively recent decision because unfortunately my son, he loves French fries. I mean, he loves them. So we cook our French fries at home with we use beef tallow as our oil, and it's wonderful. But you can and should, if you want to get healthy, the first step is to at least slow down, if not eliminate simple sugars. Okay, simple carbs, just try to get them out of your system. If you can go with a low carb diet, great. If you can go with a very low carb diet, like a ketogenic diet, awesome. I'm a big fan of it. Again, I want to be clear, I'm not a doctor, not a nutritionist. I'm not giving you health advice. I mean, I am, but I'm giving you health advice based on my experiences, not based upon some, some whatever, and definitely not based upon any sponsor. I would love to get a keto sponsor, by the way. If anybody knows any good ketogenic diets out there, diet companies, then I'd love to talk to them. Sergeant Burnell says in the chat over at Rumble, the commies won because good guys are cowards. I wholeheartedly agree. The vast majority of the good guys are cowards, unfortunately. And it's not cowardice as in like, they're going to be weak and cowardly. They're cowards in that they don't want to go out. January 6th taught us a lesson. And it's an unfortunate lesson, but January 6th prevented a whole lot of people from going out and doing things. It's not just out of fear, by the way. It's out of prudence. It's like, I remember I was going to go to this one particular rally, right? And I had friends calling, no, don't go. Feds are going to be there. Feds are going to be there. I was like, I know, but it's okay. I'm not going to break the law. It's like, no, but you'll get on the list. I'm like, guys, I'm already on the list. If you're watching this show, chances are you're already on the list. They made a list of all the people who had either retweeted or followed Donald Trump on Twitter. This just came out recently. I don't have the story here in front of me, but I read it yesterday. They made a list. This is the Department of Justice, I believe. They made a list of everybody who followed Donald Trump on Twitter. They made a list of everybody who retweeted or liked posts by Donald Trump. If you're listening to this show, if you're watching this show, unless you're off the grid completely where you should be, unless you're completely anonymous online, no thanks to what Nikki Haley wants, by the way, then chances are you are already on the list. If you have AT&T, you are probably already on the list. AT&T, 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon as Glenn Beck. You know what? Let's just play. We've got a little bit of time. Let's go ahead and play that one clip, and then I'll wrap it up because I've got some more stories, but this one's fun. Let's go ahead. Well, not fun. It's actually quite terrifying, but hey, Glenn Beck makes it fun. Let's play him.
There's a surveillance program that affects anyone who has AT&T's phone network. So we're talking very few people, very few. AT&T is part of something called the Data Analytical Services, or DAS, and it's coordinated with federal and local law enforcement agencies. And here's what it does. They have been secretly collecting and analyzing over 1 trillion domestic phone records. 1 trillion. And they do that every year. If you have AT&T, you're being snooped on by the federal government. It used to be called Hemisphere, and it's run by AT&T in coordination with different agencies. Now, Congress just found out about this, and they're going to do something about it, But I'll just throw this in. It's not a commercial. Patriot Mobile. This is what it does. It goes after anybody who has been in direct contact with a criminal suspect and anyone else who has had communication with them. So some guy that you don't know called somebody who's a criminal of any sort. That's recorded. Then that guy calls somebody else, and somebody else calls somebody else, and that somebody else calls you. That's the chain. All of your records. They're tying everyone together, which I think is good. Kevin Bacon, we'll finally have absolute proof that it is 7 phone calls away to Kevin Bacon. So we got that going for us. Again, that's an AT&T thing.
And let's be clear, I don't think it's just AT&T. I think AT&T got outed. I would say that the entirety of the network is being followed. Now, funny part is he mentioned Patriot Mobile. We use Patriot Mobile, but as far as I know, I think isn't Patriot Mobile. Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't they on the AT&T network? I thought they were. Maybe they're not. Maybe that changed. But I thought that they were not an AT&T company, but they were using AT&T technology or their system or their bands or whatever it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that changed. Maybe that never happened. I don't want to disparage them because, again, I do like Patriot Mobile a lot. They're not a sponsor like they are of Glenn Beck. They should be a sponsor of the JD Rucker Show, but they're not. but we use them anyway. So I like them. I like them a lot. So yeah, it is getting crazy out there, and this is why I harp on and I talk about it all the time. But I do believe that you should get out of the city, out of the suburbs, get someplace where you can be safer. You're never going to be safe anywhere in the world anymore unless you're able to find some place that's completely off grid that nobody knows about. That's the only way that you could possibly be safe. And even then, you still got to deal with bears or coyotes or jaguars if you're not here in the United States. Wherever you pick to hide out, there's still a risk. This is usually, by the way, the point where the outro music starts playing. But because, like I said, we're working on the technology. Lord willing, we will be back to make the technology work better hopefully by tomorrow's show. But Lord willing, again, I will be back tomorrow with another episode. But in the meantime, you all stay strong, stay safe, and God bless.